Hello friends, welcome to the part 2 of the video of ancient rhetoric terms. In previous part we have understood the concepts of these terms and today we will discuss literary examples of these logos, ethos, pathos, kairos. Please check the link in description to go to the first part. Please do not forget to share and subscribe the channel. Let us continue on to the topic now. सबसे पहले बात करते हैं लोगोस की। लोगोस जिसका की मीनिंग है लॉजिकल अपील। जब परसुएट किया जाता है किसी लॉजिकल अपील के द्वारा किसी रीजन को देकर, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल लोगोस। एंड लेट अस टेक द एग्जांपल ऑफ ओथेलो बाय विलियम शेक्सपियर। इन ओथेलो, Iago plots to bring about the downfall of the captain Othello. Iago engineers a series of events that makes it look like Othello's wife Desdemona is cheating on him. Suspicion of his wife's infidelity tortures Othello, who only recently eloped with Desdemona against her father's wishes. Once Barbentio, Desdemona's father, told this statement, "Look to her mood. If thou hast eyes to see, she has deceived her father and me thee." That means keep an eye on her. She lied to me and she may lie to you as well. Our central character, titular character Othello. Othello is a master of games on the battlefield, but he is innocent of social games. That is something of which Iago makes benefit of. In a further scene, Iago also urges Othello to recall that Desdemona deceived her own father by marrying Othello. जो लड़की अपने बाप को ठग सकती है वो किसी और की सगी क्या होगी. The same statement is said by this character Iago to Othello. Iago here lectures Othello on the abstract dangers of jealousy, but then goes on to use reason and deduction also to suggest that because Desdemona deceived her father by marrying Othello, she would probably be willing to deceive Othello too. That should not be a big deal for her. If Desdemona deceived her own flesh and blood, she might just as naturally deceive her husband. And this so-called, although false, logical statement persuaded the character Othello to have doubts about the fidelity of Desdemona. Next one is ethos, which means highlighting credibility, and the example is from The Great Gatsby novel by famous American writer Fitzgerald. In the very opening line of the novel The Great Gatsby, the narrator Nick Carraway claims that he has followed one piece of his father's advice throughout his life. Let us see what does he say. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I have been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world have not had the advantages that you have had. तो जैसे ही हम इन लाइंस को पढ़ते हैं निक के बारे में तो हमें ऐसा लगता है कि निक अपनी जजमेंट्स को रिजर्व करके रखते हैं. तो रिजर्व करके रखते हैं तो वो बोलेंगे सिर्फ तभी जबकि बहुत ही ज़्यादा ज़रूरत होगी और जो भी बोलेंगे वो बिल्कुल परफेक्ट होगा, क्योंकि वो किसी को भी जस्ट लाइक दैट जज नहीं करेंगे. वो देखेंगे कि क्या क्या एडवांटेजेस डिसएडवांटेजेस उस पर्सन के पास रही हैं जिसको वो जज करने या क्रिटिसाइज करने जा रहे हैं. Nick's tendency to reserve judgment makes him an ideal, objective narrator, while his awareness of his own economic and social advantages makes him a perfect guide to the privileged world of the Great Gatsby. Politicians, activists, and advertisers generally use ethos because they recognize that it is impossible to convince an audience of anything if its members do not believe in the speaker's credibility, morality और authority. तो सबसे पहले हमें राइटर ने यही सिखाया कि हमारे स्पीकर में, हमारे नरेटर में किस तरीके की क्रेडिबिलिटी है जिसकी वजह से हमें उसकी बातों पर यकीन करना है, उसकी जजमेंट्स पर यकीन करना है. The next one is pathos, which means emotions. It is a persuasive technique that tries to convince an audience through emotions. This is the example from Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and I'm assuming this novel is so famous that we are aware with the basic plot. In this example, George Wickham describes the story of his relationship with Mr. Darcy to Elizabeth Bennet, or at least we can say he describes his version of story, which everybody knows was false. We are not going into that deal, was it false or was it true? We are just looking at the emotions at present. So Wickham's goal is to endear himself to Elizabeth, turn her against Mr. Darcy and cover up the truth. Wickham actually misuses his inheritance from Darcy's father, out of his laziness, and turns down Darcy Sr.'s offer to help him obtain a living as a clergyman. Let us see what kind of dialogues he uses, what kind of emotional dialogues he uses basically to instigate Elizabeth against Darcy. The church ought to have been my profession had it pleased Mr. Darcy. अगर मिस्टर डार्सी मुझसे खुश रहते तो शायद मैं चर्च के किसी प्रोफेशन में होता. Yes, the late Mr. Darcy bequeathed me the next presentation of the best living in his gift. He was my godfather and excessively attached to me. I cannot do justice to his kindness. Here, with the use of such emotional words, Wickham claims that Darcy robbed him of his intended profession out of greed, and that he, Wickham, is too virtuous to reveal Mr. Darcy's true nature with respect to this issue. By doing so, Wickham successfully uses pathos, emotions, in the form of a personal story, inspiring Elizabeth to feel sympathy, admiration, and romantic interest also towards him. In this example, Wickham's use of pathos indicates a very shifty, very manipulative character and lack of substance actually. Let us take the example of kairos, which means actually timeliness. George Orwell's novel 1984, which was published in 1949, around the same time that political theorists were beginning to develop a concept of totalitarianism. Orwell's book explained the horrors of totalitarianism, the system, using a compelling narrative speech. Because the United States and Europe were hovering in between World War II at that point of time, and the Cold War was also on the verge, the issue of totalitarianism was very much in the public eye, making people much more receptive to Orwell's book. One of the best examples is this book, 1984, this dystopian novel. Dystopian novel basically describes a totalitarian state where a small group of people called the Inner Party, if you are able to recall, the group was called Inner Party, controls the whole political system. And even more powerful aspect of this phenomenon is the idea of a figure who oversees all the actions of their superstate Oceania, and this is the idea of Big Brother. So how can we say it is Cairo? It is Cairo because basically the book deals with very contemporary issues and tells all about totalitarianism and its evil effects on the population. Let us take one more very famous example of Kairos from literature world, that is Paradise Regained by John Milton. Milton brilliantly interweaves his theme of conflict and struggle in this particular poetry, and Paradise Regained basically reveals Jesus as the Son of God through the means of rejected temptations. Let us understand the plot a bit, then only we will be able to understand Kairos. Arguably, the most important theme of Paradise Regained is that one contained it the title, Paradise Regained. Jesus has been sent by God to reverse the sinful course of human history, and in particular the young Messiah. Messiah is seen as a man through his superior values or virtues will provide a corrective for the original sin done by Adam and Eve. Soon, however, it became very apparent that Jesus' work of salvation, his task of regaining paradise for mankind, for humankind, will meet a variety of obstacles, and those obstacles will be created by Lucifer, Satan. Paradise Regained, as I hope many of you already know, is John Milton's sequel to his great epic poem Paradise Lost. in which he began his story of sin and redemption by telling the story of fallen angel Lucifer, that is Satan, and the loss of innocence through Adam and Eve's original sin and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Thus, Paradise Regained retells accounts of Jesus' temptation in the desert by the Satan. मिल्टन अपनी स्टोरी की शुरुआत किस तरीके से करते हैं वो देखते हैं. मिल्टन begins his story with Jesus' baptism by John the Baptist, and at this event a voice from heaven announces that Jesus is the Son of God, a term whose meaning is crucial to the story as Jesus grows in knowledge of himself and as role of Messiah. Meanwhile, Satan has observed Christ's baptism and heard the announcement that Jesus is the Son of God. Though he is unsure of what the term Son of God means, Satan calls a council of devils and Satan resolves to corrupt Jesus as he did Adam and Eve once. अब देखते हैं सेटन किस तरीके से अपनी काउंसिल को एड्रेस करते हैं. यहाँ पर क्या क्या वर्ड्स बोलते हैं जिनको कि हम कायरो की कैटेगरी में रख सकते हैं. ही इज सेइंग दैट सिंस द टाइम एडम एंड ईव आर डिसीव्ड बाय मी, नाउ maybe human being will be redeemed by the presence of Jesus, but there is no chance of our redemption. Then he talks about his circling ours, means that they are bound to the circle of hell only. For God, 100 years are nothing but a day. Satan's time is inferior to God. They are captured within the circles of hell. Now that dreaded circular time is there, here we will just wait in circle forever. These lines basically are a comment on the current situation. Arrival of Jesus is seen as a threat and challenge for Satan, and he is making plans to tempt Christ as he tempted Eve in Paradise Lost. To corrupt Jesus and tempt Jesus is the need of the time for Satan. That is why Cairo. So, in short, we can say that Cairo is timeliness, appropriateness, decorum, symmetry, balance, and awareness of the current situation. I hope these two videos have really been helpful to understand the concept, and please provide your feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching and best of luck for exam. You can click this link to reach to the first part of the video.